Hey guys, how you all doing? So Dan from Trading with Dan here. So today we are going to talk about China and whether they're potentially having a wave 2, or maybe not just a wave 2, maybe they try to restart the economy again too early and obviously just having the continuation of the wave 1. I mean, basically the same thing. I mean, you could call that a wave 2, or you could just call it just a continuation of the original wave. So firstly, I just want to just a bit of a background on China that you may or may not be aware of. I'm sure a lot of you guys are, but I do know a lot of you guys aren't, because I see all sorts of all sorts of comments and observations from people in the financial sphere about. I mean, a lot of the people are China fanboys. They think the Chinese system's great. They think the Chinese system's buying up gold. We're going to have a gold back currency. The Chinese cryptocurrency is going to rule the world. America's losing dominance, etc., etc. But what they fail to ignore is obviously the totalitarian, controlling, like communist nature of China, and how exactly it works and how exactly the system works. So what you have in China, you obviously have the Chinese Communist Party, which is the leader of the country. And then you have state officials in the various areas, and what happens is, if anything goes wrong in an area, or anything goes wrong in China, full stop, the Communist Party will always try to find someone or something to place the blame on, because they don't take any blame for anything themselves. They only obviously take credit for the good things. So what happens is you'll get lots of state officials that just won't pass information up through the chain, because just for fear of obviously being made the scapegoat, or if they're the guys that do it, they're the guys that pass that information on. So it isn't the most inefficient way to run a country, which is contrary to what people think. People think, well, obviously being a communist, controlling, authoritarian country is bad in some respects, but it's great in the way that the country can like adapt to basically things it needs to adapt to quickly. But that isn't the case if the leadership of the country as a whole isn't getting fed all the information that it needs to be, due to obviously fear of reprisals from the people that the people lower down the food chain that can pass that information up. So obviously we all know about what they do to certain ethnic minorities and people that dissent against the state, and people that report things. I mean, it's all very controlled. They pretty much have a digital currency. Cash has pretty much already been stamped out in China, and everyone uses WePay. And then we come to their economic data. I mean, it's not even in the good times before this happened. Nobody actually believed China's GDP numbers. They always knew they were going to be lower than what they stated, but China just had this thing where they just wanted to stay over 6% GDP, 6% or higher every year, or however often they stated that economic statistic. So I mean, the only thing really that you can trust less than China's virus statistics is their actual economic statistics. So yeah, I mean, we've all seen like the videos of like the massive empty cities, and basically that misallocation of capital, and one other thing, China does have like a 10,000 person department, office for basically propaganda, where they just basically are there to as like the PR company for China, to make sure no one does anything wrong. And obviously China has massive influence across the world, like even to Hollywood, to getting like scripts re-edited or rewritten, to the NBA not being able to say things that they want to do, and yeah, literally down to everything. The Belt and Road Initiative obviously gives them influence in countries. So yeah, so China isn't the great the great nation that people think it is. And yeah, so that's what I really wanted to talk about, because I know a lot of you guys out there definitely think China is pretty much sorted. So there's lots of anecdotal evidence that shows that they're not, such as just TomTom SatNav data, pollution data, the fact there's actually apparently 20 million less mobile phone users since the start of this crisis. So whatever those reasons are for people not using the mobile phones. So yeah, that's another one. So yeah, this is the latest one anyway. So this is March the 27th. So this is yesterday, from Variety. And I will just read this out to you. So anyway, so China moves to reshutter all cinemas nationwide. Hours after municipal authorities in Shanghai gave more than 200 cinemas the green light to reopen on Saturday, national level Chinese authorities on Friday ordered all theatres throughout the country to be shut again due to continued concerns of virus risks. Over 500 theatres across China had attempted to reopen in the last week, but seen little financial benefit from doing so, with screenings averaging less than a person a day, and a national daily box office intake in the low thousands of dollars. So that's literally ridiculous. Like the whole national daily, so basically the daily box office for the whole nation of less than $1,000 a day. They had only reopened their doors after receiving direct authorization from local government bodies who verified that they were following mandated health procedures. Yeah, this is another thing actually. Especially with factory owners. I didn't know it was necessarily with cinemas. They're actually told to open. They're told to run their machines. They're told to basically act like the economy has started up again. Even though there's actually nobody actually working in the factory and they're not producing anything, because they just want to create the illusion that they are back up and running, try and create some pollution, try and burn some of that energy, try and make it look like they are reopening, obviously, so that so that they can just give that false impression. So yeah, so maybe they did tell the cinemas as well to reopen their doors to make it look like stuff was going back to normal, but obviously the cinemas basically weren't taking any money anyway. So but now China's National Film Bureau has ordered them to shut again, without saying exactly why or when they might hope to reopen. The Bureau hasn't issued a direct statement itself. Instead, the news of its directive came out obliquely via reports of its urgent orders to the Jiangsu Provincial Film Bureau, and all of the theatres are temporarily not to resume business, and those that have should stop immediately, said the local Jiangxi Evening News. Some people believe the sudden reversal of policy may be related to the fact that a new patient was diagnosed with the virus via localized transmission rather than exposure to overseas cases in Zhejiang province, which borders uber-populous Shanghai and Jiangsu province. China has taken drastic measures to stem the number of imported virus cases coming into the country, which now account for almost all of their newly reported patients. They've actually banned all foreigners coming into the country full stop now. So yeah, so on Thursday it announced a temporary ban on... Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't read ahead. Sorry. On Thursday it announced a temporary ban of all foreigners entering the country, even if they had valid visas or resident permits. It had previously limited all foreigners and domestic airlines to just one flight at no more than 75% capacity per week into the country. In late February, Beijing began mandating that anyone returning to the capital undergo a costly 14-day government-run quarantine at their own expense, obviously to deter people from coming. Obviously, as quarantine is a reasonable procedure, reasonable thing for them to expect to do from someone coming into the country, but then obviously making it at your own expense and it being expensive is clearly just a deterrent. So anyway, the contradicting orders about cinema operations from different levels of government recall a drastic late February incident in the disease's epicenter of Wuhan. Municipal authorities first said they would ease quarantine restrictions on the 11 million people locked down there by allowing those who appeared healthy to leave the city. However, they then cancelled the policy mere hours later, saying there had been an invalid decision made without higher authorization. So what likely was they had a decision made from the higher authorization, and they then changed their mind, and then obviously the lower authorization had to then take the blame for it by saying that they did it in error, and then now the higher authorization. I mean, that's just how the system works. So having received notice from the high levels of departments, movie theatres will temporarily not resume operations on March 28th, said a joint statement from the national theatre chains Broadway Cinemas, Cinema Palace and Premier Cinemas on Friday. Those who bought tickets already will be able to receive refunds within 7 business days, it said, apologising for the inconvenience. The about face comes a day after Shanghai municipal authorities announced they plan to reopen 205 of the city's 380 or so cinemas this weekend, making it the first Tier 1 major metropolis to bring theatres back online. It had planned to issue government ticket subsidies of up to 846,000 renminbi, dollars, 6 million renminbi, over the course of the next month to help get audiences back into cinemas. It also hits the same day that Hubei province downgraded Wuhan's risk status from high to moderate as it prepares to lift the lockdown measures there on April the 8th, with provincial health authorities stating Friday that transmission had been basically stopped. A Chinese practitioner tells Variety he believes the new orders imply that going forwards, theatres will no longer be opening in piecemeal batches across the country according to local regulations. Instead, they will likely reopen all at once under a one-size-fits-all model, with their operations more uniformly regulated and controlled by central authorities. Just as the National Film Bureau was ordering cinemas to shut, Chinese state-run TV channel CCTV6 you can imagine Chinese state-run TV channel is called CCTV because they are watching you guys. Announced on Friday, I'm sure it stands for like Chinese Communist TV or something. Announced on Friday that it will begin streaming all 3 Lord of the Rings films successively starting on Monday. A bit random. The trilogy was long expected to be included among the titles selected by state-run distributor China Film Group to revive the dormant exhibition sector, along with previously confirmed Hollywood blockbusters Harry Potter, The Sorcerer's Stone, and the 4 Avengers franchise films, and Coco, amongst others. The fact that the trilogy will now be released online rather than held for future theatrical releases is a further indication that the shutdown may continue for quite some time yet. The second of 3 waves of the brutal 1918 Spanish flu pandemic was its deadliest. Chinese authorities at the high-level experts have taken pains to reassure the public that there will likely not be a second wave of virus infections, saying that the country has taken sufficient measures domestically to contain the disease as long as it doesn't come in via travellers from outside harder hit regions. Yeah, the second wave of the Spanish flu, what this basically was the virus mutated, and initially it wasn't so bad, and was doing much like what the bad virus is like now, not actually so bad, and mainly affecting the elderly and immunocompromised people. But the second wave of the 1918 Spanish flu was actually the way by far the most deadliest, and it was actually it was known as, I think, the young person's flu or something, because it killed mainly young people, because what it did, it inflicted an autoimmune response in the body where people with stronger immune systems, i.e. the young and healthy, their body essentially overreacted to the disease and killed the body, so it killed the person. So yeah, I mean, if that happens, then yeah, we're definitely in trouble. But new data from several quarantine facilities in Wuhan housing supposedly recovered patients for further observation is showing that around 5 to 10% of them are now once again testing positive for infection for the second time, according to a Friday NPR report. Major live entertainment venues expected to immediately resume operations have also just announced continued closures, further signalling that Chinese authorities remain wary to let large groups congregate just yet. A number of Chinese top national level performance halls said on Thursday and Friday they will be cancelling or postponing their entire April programs and remaining shut down for the foreseeable future. These include, among others, the Shanghai Grand Theatre. So online, the news was continuous cinema closure was met with mix of patriotic acceptance as well as bewilderment and snark. If the country doesn't support the film industry soon, Chinese film will regress back to the previous century, wrote one Weibo social media commentator. 4 other users replied simultaneously below with a version of the same joke. That could be a good thing. There were many more good Chinese films then. Yeah, that's another thing about about China, is that the CCP is basically trying to stamp out like all traces of Chinese like historic culture. And then there's I can't remember what it's called, but the Chinese performance company or whatever that's based in New York that do plays based on just on historic Chinese myths and legends and stories and things. Basically, the CCP has basically made them enemies of the state and said that they're basically bad and can't go back to China because China just doesn't want people in the country to have like any heritage. Basically, I mean, what they don't want is to basically to know that anything existed of note before the CCP was in control, the Chinese Communist Party, because they obviously are worried about losing their control. So so a film professor at Chinese prestigious Peking University quipped darkly in the reply that the archive was already practically bankrupt and there's no longer anything it can bear. So so there you go. That's basically the entirety of the article. There's lots of anecdotal pieces of evidence out of China that they aren't back up and running. China's basically having a property bubble is deflating again. There's talks of China doing a massive stimulus again, which obviously was the main reason why we had the recovery from the 2008 financial crisis, was because of the massive Chinese economic stimulus that basically reflated the whole world economy. And yeah, I mean, I think there's only so many bullet trains that they can then make and before they obviously start, and so many like ghost cities and malls that they can basically construct before they essentially are building bridges to nowhere. So be careful if anyone's trying to tell you that it's all turning around and China's fine and they're over it and that's going to be the model for the rest of the world. We're just all a few weeks behind China, because it almost certainly isn't the case. So there you go. So remember, this is not a financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Always do your own research, and I will be back at you guys soon with another video.